This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hey Tally, just got your text. You want to run some Mythic Plus?
Yes, Evitel, I do, because I've got something rather special that I want to try out. Behold, after months of struggle, dedication, and hard work, Fyr'alath, the Dream Render.
Oh, cool. I heard they buffed the drop rate.
Oh, don't touch it, Evitel. Do you know how rare this thing is? This bad boy is what's going to elevate me above every other player on this realm. Finally, I'm going to get the recognition I deserve.
Tally, I'm not sure how rare it really is anymore.
Don't be silly, Evie. It's a legendary. It's orange. Oh, by the way, we can't go on holiday this year because I spent all our savings on WoW tokens to buy the mats I needed to craft it.
Oh, cool. Okay, well, should we apply to join a Mythic Plus group then?
Lol, I don't have to apply to join groups anymore, Evie. I'm Taliesin, legendary wielder of Fyr'alath itself. Top level players will be crawling over each other to be part of this Blackrook Hole plus 13. Join us, scrubs, for today we march to victory!
Did someone say something?
Oh, I don't know, something about it being almost March?
Well, he's not wrong.
Evie, I'm not sure this legendary is really making me feel as special as it should.
Don't be hard on yourself, Tally. You're very special.
Knowledge is power.
Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and welcome to another episode of the Weekly Reset, Taliesin and Evitel's wondrous wisdom show, bringing you all the latest news and knowledge from the world of Warcraft. This week we have the conclusion of the storyline in Traitor's Rest. Did you know there was an unfolding storyline in Traitor's Rest? Well, you do now. 2 new, as yet not officially announced, WoW books hit Amazon with some tantalizing description text, and our main story today, we are going to be addressing the big talking point in the community over the last week. Hero talents. Why everyone is angry about them, why we should be concerned about them, and what Blizzard is doing and can still do to make sure the war within isn't dragged into another Covenant-style disaster. A topic that I'm especially looking forward to getting into because, as you know, if you're a regular viewer on our Twitch streams or second channel, this is a drum I've been banging since they were announced at BlizzCon, and no one cared back then. I'm glad you guys have all caught up. But first, the news roundup. The Season 3 legendary Fyr'alath, the Dream Render, has had its drop rate significantly increased after a huge buff to the item's bad luck protection. Basically, if you've been farming this bad boy unsuccessfully since the start of the season, then in all likelihood, it dropped for you this week on your heroic or mythic reclear. Happy days! Unless you did your reclear before 5:45 PST, because that's when this change apparently went into effect, in which case, f you! But whatever, you now have nothing holding you back from being as powerful as everyone else beyond the 500,000 or so gold it takes to craft it. That's the real news. But alongside that, Wowhead have a really interesting article out which claims to have data mined the exact drop rates, and by claim I mean they think, and by exact I mean kind of roughly. It's a very interesting read. Link is in the description below, but the TLDR is this. Since the legendary became available on week 3 of the season, you are now guaranteed to get Fyr'alath on your 7th mythic Fyrakk kill or your 15th heroic kill if you didn't get it before then. You now have a definite number to aim for if you raid those difficulties. If you are a normal or LFR raid enjoyer, then you might want to look away now, actually. According to Wowhead's interpretation of this data, even if you killed Fyrakk 10 times, then your chance of looting the legendary are still only around the sub 4% mark, even after 16 kills. So if you've killed Fyrakk every reset from week 3 to March the 12th, which for all you calendar fans out there is in the future, your chances of Fyr'alath will still be less than 10%. If you're an LFR player, and no shame if you are, okay? I've been running my glorious bouncy Death Knight through LFR every week, you know, just on the off off chance of getting the drop randomly? Well, it turns out I was wasting my time even more than I thought I was, because even with these buffs, it would seem that it takes 10 kills to even get a 1% drop chance of the Lego on LFR. After 40 kills, your chances are still only going to be 15%. This legendary is not meant for LFR players. Also this week, 2 new WoW books popped up on Amazon, Voices Within and the official World of Warcraft tarot deck and guidebook. And whilst the latter is, it's tarot, right? It's going to have a bunch of cards with hopefully really great art. Hopefully, in my opinion, with a really stylized look. The Death card will probably be Sylvanas. High Priestess will probably be Ashara. The Fool will be Bolvar, telling us to take the Primus's seal to Torghast. Like, seriously, Bolvar? To Torghast? The thing we definitely want to keep out of the Jailer's hands at all costs? We're just going to take that right on down to the Jailer's house, are we, Bolvar? Oh, that's your plan, is it, Bolvar? Of course, yeah, well, I see no inevitable terrible outcomes from that course of action. Great plan, Bolvar. And by the way, we're renaming the Fool to the fucking idiot when Bolvar is the card, okay? From a lore point of view, the interesting one is, of course, Voices Within, a short story collection that focuses on different characters in the lead-up to next expansion. A heart-rending tale involving Anduin when he's on his beardy gap year, a story featuring Thrall and his son, where Thrall has to come to terms with the fact that his boy is all grown up now and he has to let him go and live his own life. A story with Gazlo, where he tries to reform Goblin society, and of the stories that we know about, because there are 2 where we don't, one focusing on Alleria and Arator. And this is the one that really excites me, because I've got my theories about Arator in the World Soul Saga. Some 7 years ago now, we made a video all about Arator and how I think he is the real child of light and shadow that Zera prophesizes in Legion, since he has a light shield dad and a void-infused mum. I stand by this theory, and the idea of him coming to the forefront again in the coming expansions seems obvious. And if this story turns out to be about how he is, wary of his void mummy, but they have a nice moment together where she convinces the young paladin that actually wielding light and shadow alongside each other can be a good thing, something discipline priests have been saying for years now, just saying, then this could set the stage for an incredibly interesting character arc for Arator in the saga. This novel is due for a November release date, which I hope means it's a little bit late for a pre-expansion novel. I'm a huge fan of short stories. I think they are the best way of exploring fantasy worlds outside of the main format. I am legitimately excited for this. And speaking of story, this week also saw the conclusion of the Traitor's Rest storyline that has been unfolding alongside Diggs. Diggs. At Traitor's Rest, there's a story. Didn't you know there's a story? Yeah, there's a story! I don't blame you for missing it. I think Diggs very much failed to convey to players why we should be bothering with them beyond the quite easily obtained transmog sets. I'd say there's some useful lessons on messaging to be learned there. But yeah, there's a story, which we can now reveal under the warning of a blue bot spoiler bot, as follows. Basically, what happened is Neltharion attacked Traitor's Rest back in the day with his big 2-headed dragon and was fought back by an army of blue dragons and Tuskar and Jaredin forces, which might seem an unlikely combo, but Edweird suspects their leaders, Garen and Omtila, were good friends. Like, really good friends, and roommates. Later, Garen turns out to be a traitor, and Ultima kills him, which is fair enough. Never mess with a Tuskar. Oh, and also Traitor's Rest, right? But the big reveal this week is that the battle even happened because Neltharion was actually after a specific tome in the Azerothian archives and planned to use the giant 2-headed dragon attack on Traitor's Rest as a distraction, which Sindragosa herself foiled because she didn't trust Neltharion, took a load of important tomes out of the archives and hid them somewhere safe before joining the battle herself, landing the fatal blow on that 2-headed dragon. And that is the Battle of Traitor's Rest. If you want the unabridged version, check out the Wowhead article written by our own occasional co-writer on this channel, Discordian Kitty. Link in the description below. But I think we can all agree What a great story. Question. If we are only just finding out that the Blue Dragons, Tuskar and Jaredin were the ones that actually took part in the famous Battle of Traitor's Rest, seriously, what did everyone even think this incredibly famous battle that they talk about all the time even was before that? Did the Blue Dragons just forget? Question. If everyone knew Neltharion was a dodgy tome stealer who was okay making massive two-headed dragons to cause chaos and death to facilitate his sketchy tome stealing, I mean, shouldn't that have been a bit of a red flag? Shouldn't all the other dragons have been a little bit wary of this guy at least? Like maybe, hey, don't give him the dragon soul to look after. He has a habit of being a bit sketchy, kind of wary. While these are valid questions, I'm generally okay not knowing all the answers when it comes to uncovering long-forgotten history stuff, because that's kind of how history works. It's like Swiss cheese or My Great Vault, full of empty gaps. Now, time for our main story, the community discussion around hero talents, which has been really picking up steam this week. Hero talents are, of course, the new War Within feature. 2 new talent trees for each spec, which allows them to introduce, in Blizzard's words, new powers and class fantasies. Progression-wise, they're like dragon riding talent trees in that every node will be unlocked by the time you're max level, and every node will be active on the tree when you choose it. There are no points to spend or paths to follow. The only decisions you have to make within a tree are between a handful of choice nodes. And from what we've seen so far, most of these trees tend to focus on one particular spec ability, like Thunderclap, and then buff and enhance that one ability to make it a more major part of your rotation. So it's a pretty simple system, and one that initially captured the community's imagination in a big way. And who can blame us? Because have you seen some of these hero talent tree names? Dark Ranger? Void Weaver? Hellcaller? Holy shit! Rider of the Apocalypse? These are some old school class fantasies right here, some of which have been long requested, finally making their way into the game. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I could see some potential problems and disappointments on the horizon for hero talents, and even though we are, and I quote, the biggest dick riders in the community, we said as much in a video on our second channel. A video which, by the way, is one of our most disliked videos on that channel. But since then, I have heard a lot of the points that I mentioned in that vid repeated, especially this week, as concerns over the new system has reached fever pitch. And this really kicked off, as these things often do, with an Asmongold video entitled War Within is Dead. Yeah, I know. Hold on, I'm not finished explaining it yet.
It's me. I'm here yet again to say hi, hello, and thank you to Squarespace who are sponsoring today's video. Yeah, that. But also, have you heard that Tally and I recently launched our podcast? One of my favorite things about it so far has been when someone asks, hey, what's this podcast called? And someone else goes, it's a WoW podcast, obviously. And then the first person goes, yeah, but what's it called? And then they go back and forth ad infinitum until they die. I love that. But I also love how easy it's been to showcase and support the show on our very own Squarespace website. So when I first set this up, I just made a page, called it Podcast, and plonked in our latest, at the time, episode as a YouTube embed. I had this up and running in minutes thanks to the easy peasy page builder. But given my track record with keeping the site updated, I need something a little more reactive that can, say, automatically update episodes instead of having me tweak the code every 6 months or so. Squarespace can actually be the home of your podcast RSS feed, which is amazing if we ever want to move it around. Thanks to the editor, I could just build a blog for the podcast and embed the RSS feed right on the page. Boom! But in the meantime, I can actually just embed directly from wherever else it's hosted, like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I could have them both if I really wanted. But what's cool is that these widgets will update automatically, which means our latest episode will always be featured and ready to listen to. And because Squarespace insists on being so helpful, they've actually made a whole podcasting with Squarespace guide, which shows you how to get your own podcast up and running, from setting it up to sharing and diving deep into analytics. Now, all you need is a podcast. Get to it. And when you're ready and looking for somewhere to host your juicy new audio content, head to squarespace.com/TaliesinEvitel or use code TaliesinEvitel for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Tell him Evie sent you. Don't actually, just use the code. Squarespace.com/TaliesinEvitel.
This Asmongold video is, as they often are, a reaction video. He's watching a Belialar Clips vid talking about the problems with hero talents. And it's a fun clip. It notices a lot of the same things my video does. Obviously, I largely agree with it. So does Asmon. And actually, the entire thing is pretty chill and civil and reasonable. Unlike the title of the reaction video, which is obviously dumb as cynical clickbait. But that's okay. That's just YouTube. You can call a video whatever you like. It's the content which is important, right? Well, that was certainly the view on the forums, where everyone was just happy that a real grown-up conversation was happening about hero talents, a much-needed analysis by influential voices within the community, bringing up informed and essential observations just like Blizzard have asked for, which can only in the long run make War Within so much better. No, it was a shit show, obviously. They done fished it up. This game is dead. Asmon is hating on something he didn't play yet. Here we go! Blizzard, please stop. Damn, even for Asmon, this is quick to shit on a game. Glad I refunded. This game is toast. Now, like I say, the imminent death of WoW is not really what either of these vids is about, and the stupid title was quickly changed. But this whole debacle does show that hero talents have got people on edge. They are easy to identify as the thing that might be shit about the War Within. So fans who want the game to be good can be a little bit defensive about them, and haters who love shitting on a game that they used to love find them excellent shitting on material. But since we're here, what actually is the real problem with hero talents? Oh, well, I'm glad you asked. Took you long enough. Allow me to explain. Covenants. The problem with hero talents is obvious to most people right away because it's one of the same problems we had with covenants. A choice that is presented as a player fantasy choice, but which is actually a player power choice. When you see the different Shadowlands covenants and are told that you get to choose whichever one you want, the first choice you tend to make is based on which one you think looks cooler and resonates with you and your character the most. Then later on, you realize actually being a Venthyr may be cool aesthetically, but it means your Windwalker monk is massively underpowered compared to every other monk in the game who went Night Fae, and so eventually you cave because it feels bad purposely gimping yourself and making the game harder, so you join the Sparkly Fairy team and generally feel pretty shit and resentful of the fact that you were basically forced into it just to not be the worst monk on the server. Likewise, when you see that your hero talent choice as a hunter is between Dark Ranger and Sentinel, then from a player fantasy point of view, you might long to be a Dark Ranger, but know that for Mythic Plus and Raid, Sentinel is the only real choice, and doing otherwise is literally picking the wrong talents for the content that you are playing just for the sake of it. And friends, that doesn't feel good. And I know these comments will be full of people saying, hey Tally, you don't have to be sweaty and choose the optimal talent tree to play the game. Don't be so sweaty. But here's the thing, okay? Picking a class fantasy that suits your character, that's fun. Optimizing your character to be the best it can be and playing the game as best you can, yeah, that's fun too. It is not elitist to find enjoyment in getting good at a game and playing it well and pushing yourself to get better. And it's not weird RP furry nonsense to care about your character fantasy. WoW as a game can do both, and at its best does do both. And what happened with Covenants and what people are worried will happen with hero talents is that it will be one or the other, which for most players means choosing the best tree for a player power perspective and potentially having a class fantasy that they don't like forced on them as a result. I'm not critiquing any of these two videos here, okay, because I don't need to talk about this, but Asmon says something in this video which I absolutely disagree with.
I think that the problem isn't really, there's no one thing that's wrong. Like, retail WoW has evolved in a way that it's like a house of cards. So, like, if you change one thing in the game, it will negatively affect a lot of other things in the game.
I think this is wrong, especially in a conversation about hero talents, because that's exactly what the problem is right here. Making choices about player power is fun. Making choices about class fantasy is fun. Both are fun on their own. Covenants and hero talents prove they are not fun when they are combined. And it's that simple. The player power and the class fantasy need to be separate. Have hero talent trees, sure. Have a mini talent tree that buffs and enhances one particular ability. That is a fun idea. Have class fantasy choices. Let players choose between being a Dark Ranger and a Sentinel and give them cosmetic changes to represent that choice. But don't make the class fantasy a package deal with the player power, because in 99% of cases, that means the class fantasy suffers. At worst, it makes players resent the class fantasy that they had no choice in choosing and feel alienated from a character they may have played for 20 years. Just separate them. Everyone is saying class skins, and I agree. I made a video about that 4 years ago as well. Go check it out. It will explain what I mean. But at the moment, Blizz aren't doing that with hero talents, are they? They are combining player power choices with player fantasy choices, so that's it, right? War Within is dead. Asmon's editors, who sadly he has no control over, were right all along. Well, yeah, kind of. But the good news is, it is incredibly early in the process here. When we saw the Oracle tree for Holy and Discipline Priests, everyone's heart sank, because this motherfucker is a support spec. It's the healer version of augmentation, centered around an evolution and focus on power infusion, everyone's least favorite talent. And I agree with every criticism you could possibly make about this talent tree, but I also spent a week pointing out that when we interviewed the devs about it, they basically answered every question with, yeah, that's what we were thinking, but if people don't like it, we'll just change it. Lo and behold, this week a blue post reveals that Oracle is indeed undergoing a rework. And if Dragonflight has proved anything, it's that Blizz actually are willing to make community-pleasing changes much more readily and often than we've become used to over the years. So I see every reason to be optimistic so far. But what do you think? What's the answer with hero talents? What are the problems as you see them, and how did Blizzard fix them? Let us know in the comments below. And thanks for joining us today. If you like this video, don't thank us, thank our patrons who give their actual real-life money to make all of our work happen. And seriously, patrons, thank you, because without you, there'd be a whole lot less Taliesin and Evitel. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. Remember, don't blame me, it's my editor's fault. I have no power, seriously, what do you think I am?